would tell you all that you look good, but I can't see any of you. You know, one of my greatest dreams is to live on an earth that's completely free of war or the threat of war. To be able to go anywhere, and know that I was welcomed, understood, and accepted. To wake up each day knowing that I had a safe place to live, that I had enough nutritious food to eat, and that I had unrestricted access to the basic necessities of life. To know that no single person had enough power as to be able to control the lives of others, and no person was so powerless as to be forced to bend to the will of another. Now, these are not crazy, wild-eyed dreams. Right now, collective humanity has the knowledge, the resources, and the technology to make all the pieces of my dream a reality. In fact, I believe that within the next 2 years, we could live out the reality of the dream that I just described. Within the next 2 years. The only problem is that there's this great big roadblock standing in the way, preventing that from happening. And that roadblock is centered in story, in the stories that we tell about each other, the stories that we have in our hearts and in our minds, the stories that we share. So let me see if I can give you a story that will help to illustrate the point that I'm trying to make. Once upon a time, there lived these 3 brothers. Their name was Gruff. Now, these brothers were goats, and they lived on one side of a very, very deep valley. Now, on their side of the valley, they used to love to eat grass, and one day they woke up in the morning, they realized they had eaten all the grass on their side of the valley. So they decided that they would cross the one lone bridge that led over to the other side of that valley, and they would eat the grass over there. But they knew they had a problem, because underneath that bridge, there lived this mean, ugly, nasty, disgusting, cruel troll. And they knew that the troll would eat just about anything that went across the bridge. But you know how it goes in this story. One day, the littlest billy goat Gruff got so hungry that he decided to cross the bridge. Over the bridge he goes, the troll comes up, and the troll is just delighted. I mean, the troll is just drooling, just slobber coming all down. He's got a great big knife and fork in his hands, big old lobster bib around his neck. He is ready for a billy goat Gruff lunch. But then the goat gets an idea. He says, wait a minute, I'm so small, I wouldn't make a good meal. I'm so skinny. Why don't you wait till my bigger brother comes along? He's much bigger and would be much tastier. And the troll, I know you all are thinking even a troll isn't this stupid, but it's a story. The troll says, okay. So the Gruff brother goes across. The second Gruff brother comes along, does the same thing. Wait till my bigger brother comes. Much bigger, much more delicious meal. And the troll says, okay. The third Gruff brother comes along, but this brother is huge. I mean, he has goat muscles on top of goat muscles, great big horns curling around on his head. He butts the troll off the bridge down into that deep valley below. Bam, dead. Dead. Now, I first heard this story when I was about 7 or 8 years old, and if you had asked me when I was 7 or 8 years old, what is the lesson of this story? What's the moral? What's the message? I would have said, I don't know. Don't be mean to goats, I guess. And for a long time, even as an adult, that was enough for me. But when I became a storyteller, I began to think about stories in a way that was different than I thought of them when I was simply a story listener. And as a storyteller, I began to examine the content of stories, to look for not just the surface messages, but what were the hidden messages in stories. And I began to make discoveries that lots and lots and lots of stories had the same messages. I mean, no matter where you went in the world, folk tales and legends and myths had the same underlying messages. Now, I don't have time to tell you all those messages, so I'm just going to share 3 with you here tonight, and they're messages that are included in the Billy Goat Gruff story. The first one is that there are good guys and there are bad guys, and they exist in diametric opposition to each other. The good guys deserve to have good things happen to them because they're good. And the bad guys deserve anything. We don't have to feel bad when we kill them because they're bad. We don't have to feel sad when they get hurt. They are bad guys. The second one is that violence works as a viable means to solve problems. In fact, in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of folk tales and myths and legends, violence not only works, but it is the medium of choice. It is the method that ultimately resolves problems over and over and over again. The third one is that the resources of the world are infinite. And if you just happen to eat up all the grass on your side of the bridge, just go over to the other side. There's more grass there. No consequences. Now, those ideas worked for a long, long time. I mean, for thousands and thousands of years, those ideas worked. They worked at a time when people lived in situations where you could be lunch for a large animal any minute. They worked in a situation where you never knew when the invading hordes would come in over the hill and they would want to eat you. And they would be speaking a language that you didn't understand and you couldn't possibly reason with them. You had to be ready to either fight them or get up and run fast. So those ideas, they worked to keep us safe. But those ideas no longer work. In December of 1972, during the Apollo 17 moon mission, one of the astronauts turned around and snapped a picture. Now, they don't even know exactly which one did it. When they asked, who had the camera? I don't know. I think Joe did. I think Jim did. But one of the astronauts snapped a picture, and within days, within 24 hours, that picture was on the front page of hundreds of newspapers and magazines all over the world. They nicknamed it the Blue Marble. It was the first time that an image of the Earth had been taken from that far away in space and with that much clarity. The entire Earth's surface was illuminated by the sun, the entire surface facing the Apollo 17 capsule. And you can see there are continents that are illuminated. You can clearly see Africa and Saudi Arabia. And even Antarctica was included in this photograph. And people thought that with the publication of this photograph, the entire world would be different. I mean, there it all was. This is our home, our only home. Every person, everything, every story that had ever been exchanged was right there. Unfortunately, here we are all these years later, and very little has changed. Because our stories haven't changed to match the reality that we live with now. It is no longer true that we don't know the surface of the earth. It's no longer true that we don't know languages. In the interim years between those thousands of years ago when we were eating mastodon meat or saber-toothed meat, in the thousands of years we have learned several skills: how to negotiate. We've learned how to resolve problems peacefully. We've learned so many things. It's just that we haven't put those ideas into our stories. We have yet to create stories that reflect the ideas that are true today, that we are a single global human family, that violence is no solution to the deep challenges we face, that we have to cooperate in being wise stewards of our resources. During the thousands of our early years, we had a fractured and individualistic point of view about ourselves on this planet. But today we know that it's all webs of interdependency. All that it takes is just for us to change our stories. I mean, it really is that simple. As simple as once upon a time. Thank you.